As people told, we are going to talk about ECMAScript, and we are going through the journey from the idea to the language. So first of the things I already told, but hello everyone, all the folks at the streaming. I want to say thank you for being here, and let's start the journey from the stage zero or phase zero. And as I already introduced, I'm Romulo. I'm working at Igalia. We are a company that do open source software consultancy. We focus on the browser implementation, engines, standards. So I guess you heard from us or from projects we are working with. So, step one, stage one, phase one. What's standard body or body of standards, and what's TC39? Well, before we start, standards are really needed. I'm not sure if you remember that big issue that happened time ago with the hamburger, where the cheese should go, or should have cheese or not. Well, if we use a standards body or avenue that help us unify and standardize how the recipe of hamburger should be made, all of these never happen because you follow the spec, you follow the rules, and you write your own implementation of the hamburger icon or emoji of the hamburger. So just to summarize, a body of standard or standard body, as you probably know, what WG, W3C, ISO, ECMA are just places or avenues where you unify and do uniformization. It's the place where you have some doubt or any doubt you have about something, about the recipe of a hamburger or about how number format is implemented. You go to that standard and you just read the recipe that normally is in form of spec or report or paper, and you just follow all the steps there and you can have implementation or a recipe as it should be or the canonical version of it. Of course you always can vary or can do different, but the the main recipe is there. About TC39. Lots of people think that TC39 is like this, the guardians of the JavaScript, the people that is behind the language, and they are trying to fight against all the world to make the language a standard. But no, they are just few folks that trying to make the best for all the people watching at home this stream. Use the language in the best way they can with the best performance and giving the best experience for them to work and build beautiful applications. And the group behind this we call TC39, the technical committee that works on the definition of the language, the ECMAScript or JavaScript, as we all call. And before going much further, I'm doing a kind of a glossary for the terminology we are going to use today. I guess you understood at the beginning that standard avenue or standards body would be, in this case, ECMA. That is the place where we are hosting a specification with the number ECMA 262 that casually is the name of the language that he kind of describes that we all call JavaScript. And the group of work TC39, but could be TC55, 45, depending of the specification that you are running as a technical committee. It's the people that are working towards specifying and defining the new features and trying to fix things on the language. So we are at phase two, stage two. How TC39 works. We already know what is ECMA, that is the host of the TC39, that is the technical committee that works on our loved JavaScript, ECMAScript. And now how it works. Well, this works how every house works on consensus-based decisions. The group tries to decide on the future of the language based on objections, based on feedback, and trying to move forward always with the consensus of every peer on the group. This group is composed by diverse people. We have implementers that normally are the ones that are behind of the engines, could be uh, people from V8, people from other engines, people from engine 262, or any other that you can imagine. We have the practitioners, they call, that are people like you, like me, that use JavaScript every day to build new functionalities. We have community experts, we have members from um, organizations, universities, and companies that wants to contribute for the good of the language. Normally, the steps are based on stage, is why I reinforce every time I move from slide, the slides, stage 0 or phase 0, stage 2, stage 3. Well, we have plus 1 plus 4 stages. We start on stage 0 and we end on stage 4. And all these steps are the travel from the idea to the language. So let's do this travel all together. When these kind of things happen? Well, when we work, we normally have between 4 to 8 plenary meetings all the year. Some of them are in person, some of them are online, and we try to always work between all those sessions, having several meetings, having TG2 that is focused on internationalization, TG4 that is new working groups focused on source maps, everybody interested on participating on those groups, either editors outreach or educators and tools calls, just ping me or I will give the links at the end, because all of you can participate, give feedback to the language and help build the language we work with every day. We know how it works. We know which parts are the composition of TC39. So let's try to iterate over the stages towards the creation of a new feature on the language. Imagine that we have an idea of where to put the cheese on the hamburger. Well, we have to pass through different stages. The first stage is the 0 stage, that is the straw person stage. That is when you have an idea. Well, I have an idea that a hamburger should have cheese and the cheese should go there. Well, I try to reach out to some people that belongs to the committee, people that are experienced on the JavaScript world, and just trying to get some feedback, ideas, and build an explainer or a store person proposal that I can just try to get to stage 1. And here is a list of lots of proposals that still on stage 0, mostly because they didn't get to stage 1, but doesn't mean they are not proposals that in future could reach out to the stage 4. But at the moment, they still on stage 0. And some of these proposals still being an inspiration for future proposals, because people, is not the right time for that proposal to go ahead. Perhaps in 2-3 years, there is some things on the current language that blocks the evolution of some of these proposals. But yeah, there are lots of ideas here. I will share the slides at the end. You can see all the links there as well. And when we have the stage 0, we need to go stage 1. Yeah, we have the idea. And when you end the stage 1, or when you go to stage 1 in this case, this means that when you call stage 1 and people say yeah, or don't say nothing, and you have consensus, this means that you are devoting some time as a champion of that proposal to make this proposal a reality. You have some rough ideas of what you want to do. You have some ideas in your head. Um, some of them has some demos or polyfills, but we expect to have major changes here. And as an example of this kind of proposals, one of the proposals, and kind of aligned from what we spoke, people were speaking before about TypeScript, well, type annotations proposal, that also I'm one of the champions. Well, type annotations proposal just want to bring the space for everybody use types, the language we love. So this kind of code nowadays throws an error when you run on the browser, or when you have a type checker like TypeScript, Flow, Eagle, or others. This code just kind of give you this type error because, as you probably know, string and number are different. What we want with this proposal? Well, we want this proposal when you run this code on the browser just understand this code as a comment and not as a something that should be runnable or should throw. So when you have on your execution, local execution, you have a type checker connected, you can just use as you use nowadays any other flow, TypeScript, etc. So you have typed code on your local, and you can just throw that same code at your browser, and it will run. The idea is to make easier the process between you write your code using any type checker to the browser, avoiding this compilation step. Anyway, you can always do as you do minification, you just can strip this these type annotations and they don't exist, but nowadays you are not able to do it. So this is one proposal that wants to bring this space of the types to the language without having any cost, any runtime cost. Another interesting proposal on the stage one, and I'm bringing proposals that I really like. This doesn't mean that tomorrow or in 10 years or in 5 years they will become part of the standard, but they are just ideas that I feel that are really, really great, and I just took the freedom to bring them here. Well, pattern matching. Well, will someone talk about Python and talk about other language or Rust or whatever? Well, imagine that our switch that we are used to, it's on steroids, and you can do lots of more things with switch that we are doing nowadays. Imagine that you can just use your fetch call and you have a pattern matching that you can match more than one string that we are using on switch, and you have spread, you have functions, you have function expressions, you have lots of utilities here that you can use to pattern matching and to make your code even more prettier without having like 100 lines trying to to get probably the same result as you have here. This is a fantastic proposal, but as I'm saying, is stage one. This part of the initial design of the proposal. There are lots of thoughts about it, and as a community, as a people that wants to also help and give feedback, feedback is always important. Sometimes we have to evaluate the cost of learning all these new things on the language. That also could be a burden for the end user. The complexity of implementation in some proposals. I'm not talking directly from this one, but these are the things that people has in consideration when they vote to move stage the proposal. And sometimes when you have a proposal that it's bigger or more complex, um, some of the advice that people give is strip it into different parts, and so we can kind of have 3 or 4 small proposals that can evolve independently, and at the end when it lands on the language also gives more learning time for the people in the community to kind of gradually absorb the new things on the language instead of having a huge big thing into it that probably will also difficult the evolution and learning process. But anyway, this is a side topic that I don't want to sidetrack on this. Well, go to stage two. Let's move to stage two. In this case, when you go stage two, or you already have, or you navigate through stage two, you already have a formal spec. So this could be already something that it's becoming a reality. You have all the semantics and the APIs covered. Um, it's not complete at all, but it's already in a good shape and probably will look like the future of final proposal, but still ahead, waiting for feedback from you, from people on the committee, and this starting getting serious. So things are having the spec as here. This is an example of the spec. The spec, it's simply kind of a recipe using the format that ECMA uses, and in this case, we use a TC39 for writing the spec, and just a recipe of each steps you have to do to create your hamburger with the cheese in the middle or on top of the hamburger. So this is one of the parts that you are already start working when you are at this stage. One of the proposals also I really like on this stage, stage two, is the fairing module evaluation from my colleague Nicolo and Julia. And this is something that will bring the power of you already have on your hands of dynamic import, but it's not dynamic import. It's everything as you already know. You do the resolution, the resolving the dependency, you fetch and compile the code, you attach the context, you link all the bindings and dependency tree, but you skip the step of evaluating that code. Then sometimes causes the burden and the CPU usage initialization that you don't want to have in your application. This is a different way to solve the startup performance, because sometimes when you dynamically import, you have the cost of network, but sometimes you don't care about this cost of network as the initialization process and the cost of network is not a problem, and you already have the code there. If the code is there, he will be evaluated and executed independently. So in this case, we are trying to avoid this evaluation. So the code is there, ready to be executed, but it's a kind of a dormant status. So application, it's fully prepared, but you avoid that initialization cost of the module you are loading at the beginning. This could be something really interesting for lots of different use cases and lots of different architectures, because sometimes you have to change the way you write your code to accommodate these kind of peculiarities. So this proposal will kind of cover another step on the performance improvements and how we can kind of write more performant applications based on loading and based on trying to get the code when you really need it, or evaluate the code when we really need it. When you get to stage three, well, when you navigate this stage, you have a spec almost complete or even complete, as changes on this stage are likely not to be done. Sometimes happens. You already have reviewers that might sign off the spec. The test starts on the stage three. You need to have all the tests that makes your spec compliant. Some browser or some engines start implementing the proposal. They have the proposal behind the flag. So it's kind of, well, it's almost there. If it's not this year, let's probably it's next one, or it's something that will likely to happen with no lots of changes. So I can start dreaming about it. So one of the proposals I will present in a while. But before, just to give you some heads up on some of the things that you can also see at the internet. I was mentioning about the test, the coverage. Well, you have the test262 project on GitHub. That is a project from TC39. That is the project that holds the test harness that runs against the implementations and tests the completeness against the specs. So you see the test262 for FY website, where you can more graphically understand the level of implementation and level of coverage from the engines or the libraries that implement the spec, because we talk about engines, V8, SpiderMonkey, JavaScript Core, but there are lots of other engines or libraries that also implements the specification we call JavaScript or ECMAScript on their own runtime. So this is really interesting. Also, Babel, that I think almost everybody uses as a practitioner to also fulfill some of the features when you are not using TypeScript or others. Stage three proposals I really like. Well, Intel duration format from also one of my colleagues, Ujwal, is the champion. Gives you the ability to calculate durations using the Intel API. Sometimes people don't look much on the Intel API because I think is the least well-known part of the JavaScript, but there are lots of functionalities that you can rely on the Intel API, in this case, the calculation of durations. And this is amazing because nowadays, on the past, doing this kind of calculation requires more libraries, lots of code, and this is all internationalized. So this also saves lots of size file and different and the need of loading property files and language files, etc. So on the duration format API, you just can write in French, English, Spanish, and you have your duration formatted as it is here on the slide. Another proposal that I really enjoy and really like, and it's one of the biggest proposals on the language, is temporal. Temporal, it's kind of replacement for all the libraries you used to use, like Moment.js or DataFNS, where they were amazing, but we should have these features at language, and temporal bring these features at language. This brings the capability of calculating dates, of having time zones, often do all the arithmetics that were used to do with Moment.js when we need to calculate all and to manipulate dates, with the benefit that it's all internationalized, not extra cost on library size, and it's part of the language. So this is one of the most amazing proposals that I'm aware of, and I'm really excited and hope this lands really soon in all the browsers. And when we talk about proposals and talk about ECMAScript, we have all these stages, yeah, with 0, 1, 2, 3. And when we finally got to the stage 4, means that on the stage 3, we have all the tests, the spec is finished, no more touches, and we are ready to say, well, win. And for having that flag, um, you have to, browsers need to start implementing. At least one or two implementations should be available and pass all the acceptance tests. Um, this when you got stage 4, the next year your proposal will be part of the main spec, so these will be merged on the ECMA 262 spec, so will be definitely part of the language. And in future, when an engine or someone wants to implement a full implementation of ECMA 262, they should implement your proposal as well, because it's already part of the language, and every browser or every engine should be shipping it. So it's kind of a end phase, and when the proposal finish, that is the stage 4. And an example of proposal stage 4 from also my colleagues from Bloomberg, that also sponsor us in lots of proposals we work for, is change array by copy. It's a very simple proposal, but it's a proposal that brings a new array, changing it by copying it, and giving all these utility methods that you can reverse the array, or sort, or splice, or even with replace the index by the number you want in this case. Um, like you see here, it's something that it's a utility, a small proposal, but also gives us a lots of new things, and all these methods and new functionalities that sometimes we think are small, are things that help the daily practitioner or daily user of the language, avoiding them to use libraries, as you know, Lodash, etc., that I really love. I also use, but if you already have on the language, it's even more easier. There is a list of things that proposals and other parts, um, proposals already finished, that I really enjoy and I really like, that are, some of them are more recent, some of them are older, but you just, by searching on the Google or any search engine, TC39 finished proposals, you will be able to see all the proposals that were finished from the past, since the beginning. And and see the news that are happening. And as a stage 4, also sometimes, or most of you are already using TypeScript or Babel, so you are not in a risk of just running your code into the browser and it doesn't work because implementation is not done, because TypeScript, Babel, and others that also are polyfilling, or kind of trying to fill the gap between the implementation and the browser availability of the APIs. You can use some of the new things on the language before they are officially released. This is so cool, and nowadays you can really use, because most of things don't change as much as they change in the past, or just wait for the next year to things be included on language and be part of the new versions of the browsers. And as a stage 4, because it's really important to get all involved, it's easy. You don't have to be a delegate. You don't have to be a invited expert. You can just start by writing some test262 tests, refining some of the proposals, writing documentation. I start by writing some documentation, writing tests. I start same way here, giving feedback on GitHub. I leave you here a gist of some links I have on a list for you to get onboarded and to learn a little bit more how to become part of this community, because we are welcoming you. And as the last but not least, just want to thank you. Also, you can find here a small um, um, a few questions about this presentation and slides here. And I just welcome and want to say thank you for everyone.
All right. Obrigado.
Oh,
I learned Portuguese too a little bit when I was in Portugal, so that's good.
Hey,
Paul,
Romulo, is that a dinosaur in the middle of that QR code?
yeah, it's the Chrome dinosaur.
Hey, well,
Dinosaur. Yeah.
we have some questions to go over with you, but first, a question we're asking everybody. It's really interesting to ask you because you're not just in the business of being great at using JavaScript, you're in the business of making JavaScript. What advice would you give to young folks who are just starting their career in programming?
Well, I think the most one of the things they should do, it's try to belong to a community, try to engage with open source, try to learn new libraries, but instead of just using, try to dig into the source code, um, answer questions on GitHub issues. By doing that, I think they will become even more experts on that library, but also part of the community. And this community is very, very small, because possibly you will be speaking here one day, myself, and know most of the people in the community and ask around, and give you the opportunity to find a new job, to find a career advice, or wherever. Just invest on open source, independently if you are working on open source or not. Perhaps you are already using an open source library anyway. Yeah.
And file some discussion on the proposals, like you said at the end, right?
That's you are. Everybody is welcome to
All right.
to
I'll
give
turn this
feedback.
over to Khaled for audience questions.
yeah, let's. This is a good segue to a question Vinny has asked. What are some of the official tools used by the TC39? Did you folks write everything in Markdown? Like which project tools, meeting tools? We saw your calendar, so
Yeah, well, now for meetings, well, use some for calendar. You already saw, but normally we use open source. We used to use open source tools for meetings like Jitsi. Now we changed for Zoom, I guess, from last meetings, but was a recent change. And for writing the spec, we have we let me just say ECMA. We have kind of a formal language to writing the specs. So if you want to start writing specs, you can Max. Let me try to bring the link here, so you can learn a little bit for how to write the spec. Yeah, that there is kind of for a specific format to write the language, where we have a linter, and you can use it for like write the language. And there is a funny project, a really good one from a university that called ESMAT,
Mhm.
that parses the spec and kind of outputs code. So for learning how spec, because sometimes spec is really hard and difficult to understand, and to kind of materialize what is going on written there to code. Sometimes I had to kind of write my own code to kind of see if the steps are the proper ones when you're writing tests. So ESMAT also, it gives you this this kind of really good way of learning while doing the job. But I don't recall many tools. Test 262, it's the test harness that we
Mhm.
use as a test of the spec, not test the code of the implementation, but test if the output of the engine implementation follows all the steps of we have described on the spec. And that's
Mhm.
on top of my head. I don't recall anything else.
Well, I think we kind of saw it too in kind of the temporal spec as well. It's like, yes, tools are important, but there obviously is a lot of people involved to kind of help you through the process of writing these specifications, right? You're not just kind of thrown out there by yourself hoping to like get this right the first time, right?
Well, you write by example most of the times until you learn how the things work. And huge proposals like temporal, it's kind of gradual steps, and involves lots of time, years, to get the final shape of a spec.
Mhm. Well, that kind of brings me up to like an interesting question. You kept using the word years, right? Like on average, how often or like how long does it take to go from an idea that's stage one, or was it stage did you start at stage 0 or stage 1?
Normally, stage one. I
Yeah.
mentioned stage zero because normally
Yeah.
when you don't go through stage one, your proposal is still there, like in our archive,
Mhm.
stage zero, and you can
Mhm.
always bring back to stage one again.
Yep. So from like stage 1 to final spec is finished and the spec is out there for browser vendors to kind of implement, like how long can people expect that process to go?
Well, I have two answers. One is the most honest one, and one is the the political. No, I'm not giving either. Well, it depends. It's the right word,
Mhm.
because um, a small kind of addition the language that is kind of, it's really obvious. Oh, um, like the dot at. Oh, this is really obvious. We need this. It is a very small thing. Can go through the language in less than 1 year, or 1 year, let's say, because every
Mhm.
year it's a new edition of the ECMAScript, so can be out in 1 year, because we have 8 plenaries a year, 6 to 8. You can get just go stage one, or directly and go stage by stage in each plenary, if the proposal is just simple and something that it's quite obvious that should be there. If
Mhm.
it's something more complex, that like type annotations, that people we have lots of good and feedback, different kinds of feedback, and also committee. Sometimes people are very apprehensive because it's an important step for the language. So let's do it right. Can take years. Decorated is taking years, or temporal is taking lots of years. But we want to be sure that when it goes out of the door, it's something that will last forever. Let's say.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm actually friends with Matt and Maggie, and like don't get them started on dates and times because they can talk forever. They're
Yeah.
the smartest people when it comes to that kind of subject matter. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things you want to get right before it kind of goes out the door. And an interesting thing that kind of watching, especially with those array helpers, like uh, how much how much are these kind of proposals inspired by other tech ecosystems and other languages? Because I can see hints of, from my perspective, like C# kind of making its way into the JavaScript world.
Well, sometimes I think it was a famous um, word on the biology that things are not new; they are transformed. Or some, I'm not sure how to say in English, but uh, majority of the things on the language or in different languages are just a copy of something that worked really well in other language. It worked really well in Python or in Rust, or why not bring it to the JavaScript world as well? So, or worked really well as a library, why not bring to the standard as well? So lots of new functionalities are kind of driven by this vision of copying. Copying is not the right word because copying is
Inspired.
kind of, but inspired. Yeah, inspired
Inspired.
by things that work well on different languages. So why not bringing here and bring to the users that love this language a new thing that they can even do better applications? Yeah, that's the idea. And
Yeah,
if
I
you have
love.
any, just let me know.
Well, it's funny you say that because I asked some people in the chat, and Marvin, the paranoid android, suggested he'd like operator
Oh,
overloading. So
don't talk about operator overload. Because I
yeah.
think I'm not from that time, but I've been heard about operator overloading since long time, and we have kind of a division between
Mm.
people on the committee on operator overloading. But yeah, perhaps we can try. Yeah.
Well, hopefully Marvin, the paranoid android, can kind of get involved. I think that was your call to action at the end of your presentation. So
Yeah.
it's fantastic talk. So Paul, I'm
Yeah.
going to throw it back to you. And yeah.
Romulo, thank you so much for joining us today. And I will say just the same thing I said on the way in. A couple of my colleagues were at conferences in Porto a couple of weeks ago, and I was so jealous. So I'll get there as soon as I can, and hopefully meet up with you for a coffee or something. Thank you for
Oh,
today.
perfect. See you, everyone. Bye. Thank you.